This panel is about the future of Europe. And in addition to our two gentlemen, we have two very distinguished women with us, which I think represents, hopefully, a balanced gender future for Europe. We'd like to, first of all, invite Ioana Surpateanu, who is the Senior Political Advisor to the VP of the EPP Group of the European Parliament. So, delighted to have Ioana with us. And of course, we'll be eager to hear Ioana's view on the last week, and I think she is a great personal representative. So I've asked her to share not only official views, but also her personal views on this, which I think will be great. In addition, we have Lise Kjaer, who is a futurist and the founder of Kjaer Global, which is a trend management consultancy. And it's interesting in my conversations with clients how many clients today are actually hiring dedicated trends tracking teams, not just to track the business trends that we've talked about, but also political and economic trends. It's a fascinating area. So. Now, here's an interesting thought. Iain, is there any chance you'd like to come back up and be part of the panel?
Yeah.
If you have a couple minutes, come on up. Okay. I'll tell you what, Sarwant will sit at the other, Sarwant, you stand, Iain right here. Excellent. So I think as we wind down our morning, what I'd like to do, Iain obviously gave, I think, a very impassioned and well-informed view from his own constituency, but also from his own leadership position, which I think is crucial.
I'm not running for leader.
Too bad, maybe, in my opinion. But
this morning.
But what I thought I would do is, if you don't mind, Ioana, if you can, having heard from Iain, having heard some of the rest of us discussing this morning on the views of the future of the UK and Europe in light of last week, the referendum, what are your thoughts? Give us the Ioana view and tell us what your thoughts on this are.
Good morning, everyone. Is it on?
I think.
Yeah? Okay,
there
good.
we go. Yeah.
Before I give you my views, I actually want to touch on some of the points that you raised in the beginning of when you started the...
Please do. I did that to stir the soup, folks.
The first thing is, you've mentioned about UK being able to, being the country considered to be most effective in trying to emulate Silicon Valley. I have to say that I was surprised German chief economist didn't know that, because there's actually a Silicon Alley in Berlin since 2011. So I think it was already emulated, and Berlin is growing up into becoming the tech city of Europe.
I would agree. There's another one called Israel. Israel is Silicon Valley on steroids.
I lived in Tel Aviv I did my MA in Tel Aviv, so I couldn't agree with you more.
There you go, yeah, Israel.
My
amazing.
second point is on the SME sector. I really don't see how UK will benefit more in the SME sector now, being out of the EU, when they're the biggest, UK is benefiting from the SME window and the Innofin window within the Juncker plan, the so-called EFSI, European Fund for Strategic Investments, that was created 1 year ago to raise up capital up to 315 billion in additional investment from the private sector for higher risk projects in Europe. And UK was the first country the biggest they benefited the most out of this innovation window, and the SME, I think in the SME window they were number 4. And overall, because you mentioned EIB earlier, in 2015 EIB investment in UK amounted to 5.6 billion, and over the last decade to 42 billion pounds. And so I really don't see how you would have a more innovative or fructuous or prolific environment of SMEs in UK without Europe. That's my personal view. That's Ioana's view.
Great.
Yeah.
This is exactly why I began with those comments, because I think what I tried to articulate was some of the classic arguments, but I think it's interesting to get back and forth on that. I think you're made very excellent points there. Now, in addition, one of the things that's kind of a challenge is all of us are wondering about the shift in global economic power, the job base shifting eastwards, out of our region, whether it's UK or whether it's Europe as a whole, the job base shifting eastward. And I mean, even I represent this. I mean, when I grew up in America, it was go west, young man. But when I made a choice 9 years ago to come to this part of the world, I did it because I saw the dynamism of Europe, not just the dynamism of the UK. And so I made a personal bet to go eastward. What about others who go further east? You know, and so give us a sense on the future implications, maybe both of you, on job migration eastward. Is that something that is a concern, both at the UK level now and then also at the European level? Maybe reflect on that, because that's crucial, I think.
Dorman, I don't know if I'm being too complacent here, but I don't think that's... I think that was the story of 10, 20 years ago. As talking about my constituency, the deindustrialization was very painful in the 1980s and 1990s. That's when the jobs went east. Now, I think there's both challenges and opportunities arising from technology, because I think jobs, where we sit in value chains and being really smart, jobs could come back. Now, there won't be to this. And using the steel industry as a great example. So, both my grandfathers worked in Hartlepool in the steel industry. There were 2 people, 12,000 people worked in that steel works. We've still got a steel works in Hartlepool, and it employs 450 people, and it produces more steel than my granddad's did. So, but the technology and the higher level skills is really important. So I think in terms of, there's an economic point, which is skills are the passport to success in the future. If you've got high skills, you will thrive wherever you are, and we've got to harness that. But the second thing is a much more important social point that's been touched upon, and Rohit was really good, which is, where are these jobs, where are people going to, how are they going to live? Exactly. If you're a cleaner in London, I don't know how you live anywhere, but what's going to happen if actually a robot is going to clean someone's office or house? So what's the social model that we're going to embrace to ensure that people can actually live if they haven't got the skills? I think that's really crucial. That's something that we have to wrestle with, but actually the country as a whole has to as well.
Excellent. And the region as a whole now, yes.
Yeah, the region as a whole. I don't think we'll see, honestly, I don't think we'll see huge levels of migration eastwards. I think Europe is united, disregarding the discrepancies economic-wise and cultural-wise. We have a project, we're going to continue building on it. In terms of, I think that people that normally go eastwards far, like you said, are targeting digital-related jobs. And I think we're working really hard to create a viable digital single market in Europe. And yeah, that's the problem,
which is a big issue.
It is.
I think it's a huge
and
issue.
we're still, I will just continue to count UK in. We're still a 508 million population. We are a big, big block, and we have a lot of power. We just need to figure out how to uniformize our legislation.
Iain, I just want, it's a symbolic point, but I think really crucial. So FinTech can be one of the areas in which the UK could really lead in the future. We've been fantastic. That requires us to be at the table in terms of financial regulation to work out what happens. Lord Hill resigned on Saturday in terms of the commissioner in charge of financial regulation. We're not even in the same room. We're not around the table shaping the rules in order to make sure that we can take advantage of that. As I said, it's very symbolic, but actually there's going to be a long tail with regards to that. And we will suffer. If I am a FinTech entrepreneur, I will go to Berlin or Frankfurt now. I won't be in London. So, that is a big issue in terms of the talent might drain away, not so much east, far east, but in terms of just east towards Berlin, Frankfurt.
Towards Berlin, Frankfurt,
Warsaw.
Yeah.
I think, Commissioner Hill having received the financial portfolio was a gesture from Juncker and, the Commission in general, just to show that they respect, British, I wouldn't say supremacy, but British
British excellent. How about that?
excellence in the field, and I think it was a sign of goodwill, just to to show that we understand that you want to have a say in this, and we we'll give it to you. And I think it was interesting to see. There was a plenary in the European Parliament on Tuesday morning on the 28th, and a motion for a resolution was voted. It's non-binding. It's just the Parliament saying what they think should happen from now on. And before that, the President of the Parliament was speaking about Commissioner Hill, and I've never seen, it was the first time I've seen a standing ovation of 5 minutes for a commissioner. And yeah, because he resigned, and I think it was highly appreciated. Although, I must say in the beginning, things were not clear. I remember after his, because there was an audition in the European Parliament, and after he was appointed, people were still waiting to see, they were waiting to see the results. And I have to say that after a few months, everyone started to appreciate him. And I think that standing ovation was
a great reflection.
Pretty remarkable.
Amazing. Both of you talked about FinTech within that. That's our next section of our program. But I'd like to hear, if you don't mind, you want to pass the mic to Annalise, or you've got yours. Okay. So Annalise, we've heard from two futurists this morning. We've heard from Sarwant, we heard from Rohit. I'd love for you now to sit from your view of the world and talk about what you see are the key trends driving the future in Europe and globally. Just go for it.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. My friend here, Rohit, since many years we've been discussing the future, and more recently also have meetings with the Southern. And it's interesting that futurists, actually what they do and what we do as futurists, we have a passion for understanding the complexity. And right now, I think there's no doubt we need to connect the dots in the right way. So it's not just for me to throw out a few trends. We can all find them on the internet. The key question here is, how do we connect the knowledge we have and turn that into a meaningful model for the future? Also on the EU referendum, I think it's time to be very diplomatic. So I won't share my views. There are two outcomes. First of all, I would say in every adversity lies tremendous opportunities. When the whole thing crumples up, government has problem. We saw the parties, the Labour right, having a lot of challenges. We saw that in Denmark not too long ago. I'm Danish-Swedish. I'm married to Norwegian. I worked for many years in the Nordic region. We could even say, because we are still in the EU, we could do a Danish thing, keep on voting until we get a resounding yes for staying in. There are a lot of interesting things ahead. I always, as a futurist, approach the future with great optimism. What I do now, and I've been doing for the last year, so I've also worked with the EU and the future of SMEs. I'm doing next month in Africa, in Zimbabwe, a entrepreneurial boot camp for the future survival of SMEs. We need to look out of our own nose tips. It's not just about Europe, it's about the world as a whole. What we need is entrepreneurship. I'm an entrepreneur. We need creative leadership, and what I'm speaking about, somebody who comes up with new ideas and new solutions to go forwards. Being Danish, 10% of our export is all about the creative industries, from the film industries, from fashion, food, we have them all, and also technology. We even have a Medicon Valley up there. I'm a Copenhagen Goodwill Ambassador. If you want inspiration for the future, maybe take a trip to Copenhagen to get some inspiration.
Ioana, go for it. Go for it.
I just want to, a small remark. You said adversity brings opportunity sometimes. I didn't see the adversity. I work with British colleagues, with British MEPs. There was no adversity. And the adversity that was created within UK, I think it was mostly based on misconceptions. And I think this is extremely sad.
What I mean when I say adversity, I just say that we could look at the glass half full, half empty, whatever. Correct. So the saying is adversity can bring opportunity. So whatever way you call it, good or bad, we definitely need to come out with a new leadership model, which include not just P for profit, but also people, planet, and purpose. What's the purpose of all of this? That's what we need to ask ourselves.
I think this is excellent. We're talking about also in the midst of this, as we look at the future Silicon Valleys, if you will. I mean, we see those here in Berlin. We see those in places like Israel, and I would say we see those in the Nordics as well. I mean, when I go to Copenhagen, and I mean, to be honest, blockchain I had never really heard of until I spent time with guys in Copenhagen who were at ground zero. Brilliant. And of course, I share Rohit's view. Blockchain is something we all must understand deeply. It's the great disruptor. So Rohit, real quickly.
Well, I mean, a couple of thoughts there. One is, as you know, unattractive as it may seem at the moment for Brexit, I think it will lead to some knock-on effects within the European Union, within the Commission, within the Parliament. Hopefully, things there will get slicker, faster to make decisions, push policy through, and finding better ways of communicating the value of what the Commission is, what the European Union is, because I think that was one of the big problems here, that so many people didn't even know what it did. They just believed all the nonsense about this, you know, super level of bureaucrats telling us how big our sausages could be and all that stuff. I mean, it was, you know, it was nonsense, but it became the popular hype. We didn't understand the value it brought to us, whether it was in research funding, whether it was in collaborations, whether it was having, you know, more seamless rules for doing trade, all those things. We just didn't understand the benefits. And so I think, you know, our parting gift is an inadvertent one to the European, you know, Union, the Commission, the Parliament, is maybe we'll help them get their act slightly more slicker, so that, and that sentence could have been slicker, but you know, so that other countries won't be so tempted to kind of follow us. I think in the UK, I think the change would have come anyway. There was disaffection anyway. I think Farage's big gift to us, in a sense, was, you know, he united the people who were opposed to the establishment under UKIP, forced Cameron to put the referendum into the electoral manifesto, and somehow managed to hoodwink them to saying, don't have any detail behind it, don't have a policy that people are voting on, just have them vote on a word, you know, leave or stay. So actually, in 5 years' time, we might thank Farage. Everyone might thank Farage for driving the kind of transformational change that we needed in the economy, but forcing it to happen 5 years faster than it would have done. Because of all the technological disruptions that we were talking about, the economy is going to be ripped apart. The political system is going to be ripped apart. Today, we sit there, we watch politicians, and the campaign highlighted this. There was this sort of festival of mistruth from both sides. One of the things artificial intelligence will give us will be the ability to, on screen, see the actual fact of what the person's just said. Right. And, you know, we know people who are working on that now, so that you can check in real time and you can start to bring truth to power. Now, I'm not saying I like Farage, but I think he, you know, for an unelected person, his impact on the British economy could be one of the biggest impacts of anyone in the last 50 years. And we have to find ways of making it positive. We have to find ways of changing our systems, our economic system. We have to look at things like inequality in the country rather than ignoring it. We have to look at how transparent the political system is, how representative it is, how we, you know, manage the flow of wealth around the economy, how we help people understand what they're going to do if they're not going to have a job in the future. How do we help people learn how to use their leisure time? How do we reinvent the role of the education system so our schools, our colleges and universities become community resources? So people actually don't feel daunted about going in and sitting in on a university lecture or saying, actually, I've got 30 hours free a week that I used to work in. Let me take a fine arts course. Let me hear about the history of Europe. Let me learn about nanotechnology. We could completely reinvent the role of the education system in this country to be a phenomenal driver of cultural change, of reskilling of the economy, of changing the fabric of our society, if we give ourselves permission to do it. If we use some of that money that we believe we're going to save, the 8.5 billion net, you know, if we use some of that to put it into areas which really create the capability for the future, then I think we could have a positive legacy. The other thing that no one's talked about so far is the aging population. Today, if you are under 50, there is a 90% chance you're going to live to 100. A child born today has a reasonable expectation of living to 120. Life expectancy in the UK, depending on where you live, goes up about 3 to 5 months every year. If you look at the work being done on life extension, then we've already been able to extend the life of fruit flies by 10 times. The people putting a lot of money and effort into this, people like Google, believe we could get anywhere from a 2 to 5 times increase in life expectancy. How do you motivate a 190-year-old MP? What do you buy your... But, we're moving into a world where this is happening fast. There are trials going on right now of a derivative of a diabetes drug called metformin that in itself could extend life expectancy. We are going to change the fabric of society anyway. I think what this does is provide a catalyst to start thinking about the bigger picture and the scale of change, and really starting to have a much more fundamental conversation about, well, what kind of future do we want for Britain? How do we heal some of the obvious divides? How do we let people talk about their concerns? How do we create a conversation where people feel heard? And then how do we start to map out what a vision is of what a more prosperous, more inclusive Britain might look like? If we don't do that, then I think we have the conditions for an unholy mess for the next 20 years.
One thing I appreciate, Rohit, you're unswervingly positive. Bless you. The three of us were chuckling that if the truth meter happens in politics, it's the end of politics, folks.